Hey guys, Tammy here, and today we're going to talk about 5 common myths about attorneys. Now, this will be relative to helping you understand working with an attorney and also helping to understand maybe what advantages you can bring to the table as a self-represented person if you don't have an attorney. Before we dive in, let me just say, please click like on this video if you like the video, and also subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released. The first common myth, I think, about attorneys, and just so you know, I mean, if you're watching me, you probably know that my husband, Thomas, who was a family law attorney, passed a little over a year ago. And this actually was a writing I found of his. So I'm kind of digging back through his old things and just seeing what wisdom we can pull out that's maybe left there that he didn't actually get to bring to the table, so to speak, on our podcast. Don't take offense because these are not mine. These are out of the mouth of an attorney, right? So the first thing is that they're smart. Okay, I think we tend to look at it as, oh, they went through law school, they passed the exam and they're smart. And, some of them are, and some of them not so much. It's like any other walk of life. I know people who, barely graduated law school and who took multiple attempts to pass the bar. And then I know people that graduated top of their class and, passed the bar on the first try. Thomas was one of the people that passed the bar on the first try. But some of them are more intellectual than others, but also being smart doesn't always translate to being wise, right? I think a lot of the wisdom of how you move through the family law system a lot of times comes with experience and comes with kind of a certain level of emotional intelligence, which you don't necessarily have just because you're intellectually smart, right? We have IQ and then we have EQ. So again, they may be a very, very intelligent attorney, but if they don't have very high EQ, emotional intelligence, then they're going to maybe take you down a more conflict-ridden path, a path that results in the case being more expensive, more difficult to settle, all of those kinds of things. So just don't mistake intellect alone for necessarily being good at the practice of family law, because there's a lot more that goes into it than just the intelligence of practicing law. Now, I mean, is that important? Do you want somebody that's a good lawyer and knows what they're doing and knows, the law and the procedures and all those things? Yes, of course. Of course, you want them to be competent at their job. But if they're competent at their job at the expense of any emotional intelligence, then I think that starts to become a problem. And by the same token, I've also seen situations where somebody will say, oh, they had such a great, in medicine, we call it the doctor's bedside manner, right? And so I've had people that describe the attorney as like, I don't know what it's called in law, but bedside manner, essentially, and they're really, really good. And I always say, okay, that's great. You've got somebody with some emotional intelligence that is a great person at like explaining and doing and all those things. But again, that doesn't translate to performing well in the courtroom, right? In front of the judge, when that intellectual part does kick in more, where it's procedural and arguments and all those kinds of things. There's a balance there. And so I'm just saying that a lot of times our case isn't necessarily super complicated. So the intellect isn't as important, but our case is super emotional. So the emotional intelligence is more important. And sometimes you have vice versa. Sometimes you have cases where pretty much you agree on the kids and all that, and the emotional component isn't there as much. And it's more of kind of the division of assets and the number crunching and kind of the more intellectual, tactical part of it. So just know what's important and what pieces you're looking for. The next thing that I think is a very common myth is that people think that an attorney can help you make good decisions. And this kind of goes hand in hand with my first point, because the way that they're trained in law school is that essentially justice will prevail through the clash of viewpoints, right? Through this fighting and through presentation of opposite positions, that justice will be served, and that this clash of viewpoints will sort of bring forth the truth. And the problem with that approach is attorneys become very focused on winning, right? That clash of viewpoints is a battle, right? It's war. They become really focused on winning. And it's funny because I've had this conversation with previous clients about, well, does an attorney really care if we win or lose in the courtroom or whatever? And I'm always like, oh, yes. Oh, yes, they do. Most attorneys that I know are very competitive. They very much hate to lose in the courtroom. It's sort of like asking, does a ball player care if we win the game? Absolutely. Or else why are they on the floor? If an attorney is in it, they're in it to win it. Yes, that is a very important piece of it. And so they get very focused on winning. And that's a good thing in a certain way, right? Because that's their job. That's what we want them to do. We want an attorney that's going to win our case. But again, I think it comes back to the point of having some balance, like with the intellectual versus emotional aspects of the case. This is kind of the same way. Do I want somebody that's focused on winning? Yes. But attorneys tend to become focused on winning at the exclusion of the cost of winning. And in family court, let's face it, there's a lot of collateral damage. So to your family and to you and to your co-parent, So it's not as simple as just winning. We are not out to win at all cost, because the cost of it is, one, the collateral emotional damage. And then also there's a financial component of that, right? If I spend $100,000 trying to recover 50, is that really a win? When you take the total picture into consideration, it's not necessarily a win. I actually knew somebody personally that this happened to, where it was a close family member of ours, and they went to this really kind of high-powered attorney who was like, oh yeah, other parties in violation, and you can definitely get your, I think it was like $30,000 or whatever we were talking about. And they did go to court and they did win. But at the end of the day, when all was said and done, our family member ended up with a $50,000 attorney bill. So, was that worth it? I mean, I suppose you got your kind of pound of flesh out of the other person, but it cost you 20 grand essentially. So no, I mean, you'd have been better off to just leave it alone and not spend the time, effort, energy, stress, and all of those things. So that's the part of it that the attorney's not really weighing. And from the emotional component of it, where there's that collateral damage to you, your kids, and your family, well, an attorney can't really weigh that for you, right? I have clients ask me a lot, should I do this thing or that thing? And my answer to that is always, well, I can't tell you if you should, because I'm not the person that has to live with that choice. If you choose curtain A, the consequences will look different. The benefits and consequences of that choice will look different than curtain B. I'm not the one that gets to live with the benefits or has to live with the consequences of that. And so that's different for everybody. For some people, the financial piece of it's more important, that financial security, things they've worked hard. For some people, it's the emotional component. They don't want the stress of it. They don't want the anxiety. They don't want the stress on the children. So there's different pieces of it for different people. But really, your attorney's job is to focus on the legal aspect of your case and to win that case. You have to understand that all of the advice is coming through that frame. And I think that's really important particularly when you're dealing with a high conflict or narcissistic person, because you have to remember that that advice is solely legal. It's not for most attorneys, and I won't say all because some of them do understand sort of the mental, emotional side of it. But for the vast majority of them, their job is to focus on the legal, and that's what they do. You're not going to get somebody that goes, well, you should probably report this incident to the police. But if you do, then it's probably going to inflame your narcissistic ex, and you're probably going to get more repeat of that behavior. And will reporting this particular violation to the police result in any court benefit? It might not. If that's the way the discussion went, then you could make a more realistic decision and say, okay, this may help me in court. It may not help me in court. And given that factor, do I really want to go over here and stir the pot with my ex and create, all of this drama? And because they're a narcissist, also have them repeat the behavior even more because they know it bugs me. Okay, so that's kind of the extra piece of this that maybe an attorney is not necessarily getting into with you. So that is part 1 of 2. I've got 5 common myths about attorneys total for you. I just gave you 1 and 2. In the next video, I will give you 3, 4, and 5. But as always, let me remind you, if you'd like to know more about my coaching services, please go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There's a link on that page. You can book a time to speak with my staff and learn more about how I might be able to support you on your journey. See you guys next time.